Thank you so much. First of all, there is no risks at all, but perhaps you can tell about the opportunities. So let's just move on. So my name is Teemu, and I'm leading this Defense Innovation Network Finland, which is headquartered in Riihimäki, 60 kilometers north from Helsinki.
Nice to meet you.
The reason why we have been building this kind of leading defense innovation hub in a small town of Riihimäki is that we are hosting one of the main garrisons in Finland. We have 7 specific research centers related to electronic warfare, networks, communications, cybersecurity, but also like military medicine centers in our town. We also have industrial players like rifle manufacturers Seiko and Millock and many other companies. All together in Häme region we have more than half of the defense industry in Finland. So what is defined after all is how we are unique is that we connect you with the end user. So that's really specific. There is dozens of like, let's say now the Neto, Diana accelerators and so forth, but they do not really have the access to the end user. So that's our mission, to get you work with end users, not only about the defense forces, but in a wider spectrum. We are hosting innovation hubs and RDI labs, so we also can help you with the technology and so forth. 2 batches of our accelerator, 24 companies, in 9 months, 2 exits, 6 VC investments, many commercial deals with defense forces and primes. Happy to be here. Let's start with the defense guy, Daniel, straight from London, but your company is also nearby in Tallinn.
Yeah.
Please.
Hi everyone, great to be here. So the first thing to say is I'm not Nick. Nick is my fellow general partner in Archangel Ventures. So Archangel is a defense first fund. We're headquartered in Tallinn and the UK. We focused on next gen defense. And for us that means you've got to have some sort of emerging technology, deep tech. You've got to have deep integration with end users, people are going to use it. And you must have some degree of autonomy, right? Whether that's software or efficiency or so on. We really see that as kind of like the core of the future of the defense market. You know, going back to the question that was sort of posed by our introducer, you know, we sort of see the whole world as defense now, right? We think that, you know, the big macro trends that we're just seeing this international sort of unraveling of order, and it's now, you know, a multinational or you know, different blocks are competing in the tech domain, right? And sort of pure competition in technology is basically what you see in defense, right? So my background, I'm an engineer, grew up in Canada, been in the UK for 20 years. When the opportunity came up to you know, be part of it, start a defense fund in the Baltics, that's really important to me because my brother is a senior military officer in Canada. Our responsibility is to protect Latvia, and my wife is Estonian. So, you know, I'm very, you know, clear in terms of, you know, where the danger is in Europe. And, you know, we set up to start this fund, you know, we believe that if you're focused on defense, you should be focused on the NATO border, and you should be focused on the problems that the NATO border has. So we are, you know, as a fund, our fund strategy is to identify stuff which is very critical today. And that means spinning a bunch of things out of Ukraine and getting them set up in Estonia or Poland or whatnot. But then we're thinking kind of what's needed in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So our purpose as a fund is to work with all of the nations across what's called the JEF, the Joint Expeditionary Force, which is from the UK through the Nordics, so Norway, Sweden, you know, here in Finland, down through Estonia, the Baltics, Poland, and then back across through the Netherlands and Denmark. And what we do is, as a fund, is work with those military organizations, those nations, to understand what their military problems are. And we're attempting to kind of forecast what technology is going to be needed, right? Our central thesis is that deterrence is all of us working together, and that means we all kind of need to be on a common technology base. So we're trying to find the best from every region, and then we have the connectivity to introduce it to everyone else. And where we're sort of headquartered is in Tallinn, so we start with sort of Estonian type problems or Baltic defense problems and work north into Finland and south. So that's how we think about the world. You know, the opportunity, we just think this is the next 20-year trend that we're doing. I've been a deep tech investor for quite a long time. I did a lot of the investments in space in Europe, so I was an early investor in ICEYE. You know, my thesis hasn't changed from 10 years ago, right? It's about finding the best tech. It's about giving Europe like sovereignty and control and being able to compete on the international stage. So I think that hasn't changed, and it's just become into sharper focus. So with that, I'll hand over to my fellow panelist, Voima.
Yeah, hey, hi everyone. I'm Inka Mero, managing partner and founder of Voima Ventures. We're Nordic Baltic deep tech fund with offices in Helsinki and Stockholm. And we're sort of a generalist deep tech investor. So we back the next generation unicorns with scientific foundation. So 70% of our 45 to 47 portfolio companies actually originate from the 28 universities or research institutions from the area, including VTT or Swedish RISE or the Danish Novo ecosystem. And our thesis for our latest fund, which is 110 million, and which we launched roughly close to 2 years ago, was that we looked into these megatrend opportunities and what deep tech and science-based innovation really enables. It's basically, what we're seeing with AI is just the tip of the iceberg. And there's like massive innovation in the material sciences, microelectronics, quantum. Sorry, there's some strange sound in the background coming to my at least. So from even in biotechnology and so forth. And if you look like the strongholds of the Nordics, optics, photonics, microelectronics, AI, all of these areas have a lot of dual use opportunities. So from across from our fund 1, 2, and 3, we have plenty of companies working with the defense and military segment from the start, whether that's AR, from the field of AR, company called Dispelix, which obviously was a very public knowledge that it works with Collins Aerospaces, or semiconductor companies like in the quantum side, where actually it's more of this geopolitical play for quantum-based power chips. So, for example, Semicon, which has been here on the stage, working on their 100 qubit semiconductor chip. One of the most well-known examples, where I'm chairperson myself, is Kuva Space. We're building a constellation to provide daily insights of the NATO eastern border, so we're able to do that only with 8 satellites, with hyperspectral imaging, and most important part there is algorithmic analysis of the pixels, what you see. And whether that's safety nets or anomalies or some specific building structures, what you need to observe in order to guide that other intelligence or SAR radar or whatsoever, what ICEYE does, you need this sort of an insight. And for us, this is really a value creation question. So from this megatrend point of view, I actually believe that you're totally right. You know, this turbulence in the world is not going to go anywhere. At the same time, we're living in a very rapidly changing environment. So it might be that, currently there's like this huge boost on governmental spending, but also let's remember that we can't afford to spend it on pipes and tubes. So it has to go into areas that grow other parts of productivity, innovation, and growth. So it's not only about doing something for the warehouse, you have to provide innovations which then span from this defense segment to other industries, whether that's robotics, mobility, AI-driven Earth observation for carbon sequestration, whatnot. Even, of course, health as well as energy and so forth. So that's who we are. Our typical entry ticket is between 500,000 to 3 million, from pre-seed to early A. We could go even later. The plan is to back the best companies with up to 10 to 15 million. So looking, of course, that assuming that the company is growing value. Currently, we've done 12 investments from the third fund. Latest, for example, being a complete challenger for the existing AI based language models of a next generation architecture. So we're very long sort of sighted in this respect. So we wouldn't invest to something that is very short-term opportunity, selling something to defense, but we could be investing something that really grows, has a high traction in the defense, but has a long-term value creation opportunity in other segments as well. Looking forward to the discussion, and now I hand over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Inka, and I appreciate the invitation. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the invitation. A chance to be here with both Daniel and Inka and Teemu. My name is Philip. I'm an investor at Expansion Ventures, so that's a 140 million euro fund based across Paris. That's where most of our team sits, and then Luxembourg and Stockholm. That's where I'm based. And we invest in early stage companies at the pre-seed and seed stage. Typically 1 million euro checks in space, aerospace, and defense. And a colleague is coming to fix my microphone. Is it better now?
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. Should I start over or should I just continue?
No, okay. It's okay.
So early stage investor in space, aerospace, defense. I mean, I came from the space side, and then over the last 2 years, been spending more time on aerospace and defense. And maybe coming back to the original question posed, what are the biggest risks and opportunities? So obviously, a difficult question to answer, but I think it comes back to the specificities of defense as a business, where it's like still a business. We are investors. We need to make money and return them to our LPs. But in simultaneously, there is like a important underlying mission. And so, I think the biggest risk is that the companies we invest in are not able to sort of ramp up their sales and actually become viable businesses. And then we are not able to exit those opportunities and actually generate liquidity and return to our LPs. So I think that's on the risk side, but on the opportunities is like the opportunity cost is massive. If we actually don't ramp up the invest in defense, if those companies are not doing well on an underlying basis, then we are in big trouble, because like there is no other option for Europe and then Western countries than to figure this out.
I would agree. I think one of the biggest risks, what I see, is that actually the later stage investors and the later stage institutional play doesn't really understand the capex requirements, as well as the sort of a hardship of sort of a scale this business. I think ISI is a great example. 10 years, now it's here. But still while back it was a bit different.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's something unique about space and particularly defense, in that, quite often, take a step back. So my background is I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Canada, reading about DARPA, right? So my 10 years of venture, more than 10 years now of venture investing in Europe, is go around and find tech in Europe that solves DARPA problems. And if you're not familiar, DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency of the US government. They're responsible with finding tech which is going to give the US government like advantage, right? So that's the thing that I think Europe needs to do. And particularly with ISI, Philip and I were having a discussion about this, like what's odd about space and particularly defense. Sometimes, people know what the product is going to be that's going to win before that product even exists, right? And that was true with ISI. Like people knew that they'd kind of won, by 2020, right? Like people knew that they were the winners, even if the product was continuing to develop. And I think that's what's quite unique about defense. I think the risk actually is something that Teemu does, right? Which is integrating with the end user, right? Like defense necessarily has a lot of secrecy about it, and people don't want to talk about their advantage. And how they operate is sometimes very, very unique, and you really need to go and work with someone on the front line who's got experience in order to do that. We try to then bridge from that and think about sort of what's the strategic, what's the next thing, right? And the thing after that to do this forecasting. And the idea is that if we get all of the countries kind of working on the same tech base, then we'll all kind of naturally start to, think the same way, think the same systems and so on. I think the biggest risk actually is the integration of defense with society. And that's the thing that I think, Finland is very good at, right? Like, personally, I was so glad when Finland joined NATO like, everyone knows that the Finns know how to fight, right? And they do that through their real integration between society and defense. And I think that's the thing that the rest of Europe, we need to catch up on. And it's that integration of that tech base with how we think about defense and how the rest of society engages with defense, which I think is the biggest sort of opportunity and probably the biggest risk that we kind of all face, because it's that which generates deterrence, against any sort of opponent. So I think people talk about like capex and so on. I don't see that. Many of the companies that we invest in, we do pre-seed through to Series A. By that time, we help them find contracts, we get them onto contract. I mean, then we hand them over quite often to like a private credit or a debt provider, right? Because when you've got a 10-year contract with defense, you know what that revenue is like years and years and years in advance, right? And then you don't need the sort of the VC type trajectory. So we sort of see sometimes companies like step off the funding path at that particular point. So that's why we sort of engage in the stage we do. We're trying to finding new tech, engage with defense, get you the first contract, build up that value, and then from there, we'll work with you for years and years and years. Maybe you go into debt and so on, and then maybe it's a private equity exit, or maybe it grows really big and you get to IPO. But I think there is actually more flexibility and oddly more certainty around defense companies.
Thank you so much all. For sure, as you, Daniel, mentioned, so we are the defense country of the world, so we are 5.5 million people, and we have a reserve army of 1 million people, so that's quite biggest in Europe. Of course, we have also the longest border, and this combined with our technological capacity, all these kind of deep tech innovations created exactly here in Finland. And what we are altogether doing in Finland is that we are building a testing, I hope not, we are building a testing platform and providing this kind of testing and validation, let's call it facility, for all our NATO friends. But yeah, let's go back to Philip, as you are one behind in these discussions. I mean, to tell about, if you could pick up like a one success case, that how it went as a story. Was there something that you could tell for our audience, that what to avoid and what should be done to succeed?
Yeah. So I mean, one portfolio company of ours I'm happy to talk about is a company called Alta Ares, so a French company, and they work with embedded AI video analysis for drones industries. And I think, and so we basically invested early this year, and since then they've been running around and testing in Ukraine and working with big players and doing partnerships. And I think this company is interesting for two reasons. The one of them is that, and maybe my colleagues will disagree, but I don't think that defense venture investing is that different from any other venture investing. Like, still you are looking for extremely driven, competent founders who have some vision and are moving fast. And then if they are moving fast and if they are working on a foundational right idea, they can figure it out, especially at the very early stages where we come in. And so, I mean, when we were doing the investment and we were writing the thesis, I was, a bit skeptical. I was like, there are many of these players. Why should we invest in this one? And one of our partners, she knew the team well. She knew the feedbacks of sort of from internal sources, like non-public feedback. And she was like, well, let's just do this deal, and you will see that it's a good one. And that's precisely what happened. And we invested like 6 months ago, and since then, like, just every month they've been running around, making progress, making updates, and I think that's extremely positive notion for what's to come for the company. I think that so the velocity always matters, and that's how we think about decisions at the early stages. And then I think the other interesting aspect of it is, I often wonder about the positioning for defense companies. How can you actually make money? So you've got the all value chain from the basic components and materials up to a full finished products and services, and you've got multiple domains on operations, and you've got different theaters, and then what is the right position to invest to generate the returns. And I think Alta RS it does not do full end-to-end systems. They are not competing with Prime. They do I don't want to say niche, they do part of the value chain where they have the competence, where they know how to work with it and they can succeed, and then obviously from there they can extend to other places, but also if they are not providing the end-to-end service and not competing with everyone else, they can actually cooperate with much more people. So the cooperation border is much larger, and that comes back to the question, how can we make money? And I think it's not only for the end-to-end service provisions, but there are also other places in value chains which are interesting for venture investors to be looking at.
Thank you, our spaceman. As I just learned that you are one of the best experts on that field. So anything? Well, no matter of fact, Inka, it was quite interesting discussion that we had. That where is the line where dual use or where the defense starts, and you raised quite good point about that. So. You said that.
Yeah, I was talking about the sort of we were talking about the transition that many of the VC funds have started to shift to dual use and also military solutions. And you were saying but you can't do just military. And I said sure we can. And I'll give you a couple of examples from our fund too. There is it's actually Aalto University spin-off, a company called Elfus. They do black silicon-based photodiode. So in a way, if you think about these light sensors which can absorb every single ray of light and be extremely sensitive on various applications such as X-ray imaging or wearables or analytical instruments. And then of course in drones, when you need to target certain missile systems and everything, giving completely different operational spectrum for the drones, which is extremely critical because obviously drones are easy to target. So that is a good example, and many companies in these fundamental technology layers, they actually pivoted when the war started to defense, due to the fact that best startups go where the market is sort of creating the most rapidly, and you also get product market fit and validation. But it's of course not always the easiest, because if you're working with a component, you need to partner with other players and to provide a fully integrated system. I think Kuvaspace is a great example from this other perspective. Initially, when we invested, we had a very sort of this green investment thesis. It was around carbon sequestration, ocean economy, predicting the harvest yields, looking into protein ingredients, pesticides whatsoever. And when the war started, we just shifted the whole focus to the safety and security and military, which we all had from the very beginning. And of course, if you work with basically hyperspectral imaging and algorithmic analysis, basically your use cases are limitless. So you need to find the best and match. And discovering those specific use cases it took a bit of time, of course, because the company had to integrate very deeply to various organizations and understand what kind of topics would add value. So I would also add this product market fit topic. So I used to work in the early 2000s in VC in Tel Aviv. And of course, there was already a lot of insight what kind of solutions are needed. And many of these solutions then span to the civilian industries. And that ecosystem obviously has been working very well in Israel, providing them a really unique tech advantage in many ways. And I think coming back to the Nordics, that's exactly the opportunity what we have. And somehow getting this ecosystem work in a way that you get in pretty quickly to the domestic or regional lead customers, and then you scale from there. That is obviously needed, and that would optimally be the advantage of NATO innovation ecosystem altogether. One of my family members is representing the Finnish army in the Norfolk in the US side, and clearly US armies also, and even US space intelligence, a lot of them, they are now moving to these open innovation ecosystems that you sort of have these various closed data partnerships even with startups, and you're able to very rapidly sell something, show your capabilities, and then scale those across various partner countries, not in a way that you actually have to be on these procurement systems for the next 6 years and then sort of wait and see how it goes. And I would love to hear your experiences on this rapid governmental deployment, because some countries have been super good. I think Baltics have been even faster than the Finnish have been.
Well, yeah. So our opinion on this. I guess at the highest level, we think we're kind of returning to kind of a Cold War type situation, right? Where defense is driving much of the tech agenda, and for a new entrepreneur is thinking like, I got something new. Where do I see future competition or opportunity, right? It's kind of the clock's kind of like turned back, right? So I think that's that. I think the second thing is that the opportunity in Europe is a lot bigger now than most people think, right? If you think of sort of the world separating into different blocks of China and Russia, and sort of the US maybe doing what they're doing, and Europe, right? European defense spending will have to climb to US level or beyond, right? And that's what's sort of forecast in NATO. So, and particularly in the Baltics, like Estonia is going to spend more than 5% of GDP this year on defense, right? Poland's been at 4% for a while. I mean, these numbers are only going to go up, right? I think this is coming back to the point I made earlier. It is this togetherness, right? And everyone using the same thing, and it's very critical for us that we build like champions in every single region, because we think, or the image that I have is kind of like we're sort of like an ancient Greece type situation, right? Where you have many villages in Europe who are all specialists at their particular thing, and we need to it's this trade between them in defense and how that operates, which is going to make sort of NATO work together and so on. Now, how do we sort of get there from where we are today? Well, I mean, this is why we've set ourselves up the way we are. So, our senior associate Jan is a 10-year reservist in the Estonian Defense Force. We've got really deep links into Estonia and the Emerging Transformation Command. I sit on the NATO Investment Pathways Board for the industry advisory body there. My other general partner, Nick, he has a secret clearance into the US, right? So we've got 2 guys with secret clearances. The idea is that we work across all the JEF nations. Hopefully, someone will give someone a contract first, right? And what happens in defense is like everyone doesn't really want to go for the first risk. They want to be the first buyer. So, we try to operate across that entire region, and whoever sort of jumps first, we can then introduce what we think is the best one to everyone else, right? And that's how we kind of open that particular door. And this is how we then sort of develop this sort of commonality in the tech roadmap, right? And from that, we're trying to forecast, using the problems that we have here in Finland and all across the border. That is what our focus is, right? We're trying to say there's a lot of stuff in defense, but we think the more surgeon stuff, where it's really going to matter, if you're an entrepreneur building, this is where you should focus, right? So we try to be very clear in terms of where the problem is, what can be solved, and we tether that down to individual problems in countries to get companies on contract, right? And that's how we build value and we develop that.
Thank you so much. I think we are already over time, but just a couple of things that I would like to pick up from Daniel, your speech. So that we are together. I have also felt that so strongly wherever I have been, and believe me, I have been in many places last 1 year. And another one is that there is amazing, huge opportunities available, and as Inka mentioned, so all this concept of dual use gives you much more opportunities, not only doubling it, but even more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy.